What is a press release? It is a research document that an individual or organization sends to the media with official information to alert them of news or an event. So I think there's often a misconception with some people who are new to press releases, uh, that basically they will send one to a reporter and then it will be in the news just like that. And that's not exactly how it works. Typically, it's a document that reporters can draw on. And if they find the press release newsworthy, then it's a lot of information that has been vetted by you or the organization that can be helpful to them in writing a story. So it is recommended that press releases be pretty short and brief, typically just a page and a half. And some of the things you might see in a press release would be the headline, the boilerplate, which we'll talk about later, contact information, data, sources, and more. So why should we use one? Well, we've talked about this before. It is a place for um, informing reporters of your news, and it can encourage them to write stories. And also, it kind of eliminates the guesswork in that, in trying to find out, what your story is about. Um, and typically, it does serve to announce events. It's different than if you've ever heard of a media alert, which is more of an invitation to your to journalists to either come out to your event. Um, it's not so much of an invitation in that sense, but it does provide crucial details if you are running an event. So I'm gonna get started. Right at the top um, is, of course, the headline, and you may realize already that it's actually really important because editors and reporters are really busy people. Um, the headline should be clear, concise, and compelling. And if you can add any data in that or a statistic, that can really help well. But really, it should be 10 words max. And shorter is better for how it appears in Google search. Just in terms of if you ever see like the meta description, that's like that description you see in Google search. Typically, it stops at about 70 characters. So if your press release if you've posted it online and you're also sharing it um, to gather attention that way, it's good for Google search for interest, but also like SEOs, which is search engine optimization. And that's just basically the best ways that you can get your press release at the top of Google searches. So, and yeah, like I said again, clear, concise, and compelling. And if it's punchy, that's also great too. So, this is just an example of a headline that I made. Um, and I tried to make it as concise as possible and not go over the 10-word limit. So basically, social housing coalition demands real solution to crisis. And if you're able to right now, uh, or even if you want to just say it out loud, like if you have a headline example, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, then go ahead. Okay, that's okay. Maybe then we can get back to that later if you have. So this is just an example, and I'll also give you all a template as well. So next, I want to move on to the subhead, and the subhead comes right, as you can probably guess, it comes right after the headline. And this is a good place to provide any additional information to your headline. It is generally 20 words max, so it's not super long. And it's a good place to, if there's any kind of reference to complex information in your headline, it's good to try to put some more context in the actual subhead. Um, of course, there's limited space, but uh, in just a few words, basically. So this is a subhead example. It's coming from our my template that I made for you um, around election organizing. So it starts off with your group, if you're part of a group organization, joins the first of its kind social housing and human rights coalition in, say, for example, organizing rallies as a type of action on, I'll give a random date, April 20th, leading up to the election. The coalition is demanding that the incoming federal government invests in the expansion of social housing. So this is a great place also, the subhead, to put um, who, what, where, when, how, and a few words, of course. So, um, and now we're getting to the first paragraph. And then you've probably seen this, but the first paragraph generally starts with a date line. So that's your city and date. It also is a more extended version of the subhead. So like who, what, where, when of your event. Um, and it really like the first paragraph, because again, editors are busy people. You really want to get across why your news matters. So why is it timely? Um, and if you can, put a bit of context in there too. And just also realizing too that paragraphs typically are about 4 to 8 sentences long. So also trying to work within those limits too. But this is a first paragraph example. So during an election where Trump tariffs and the housing crisis are on the minds of many, Canadians are looking to party leaders who will tackle both these issues head on. So uh, blank, your group's name is organizing action, location if possible, on this date, alongside a national coalition to fight for a twofold solution to economic threats and housing insecurity. Answer, social housing. Um, and also too, the sentence looks a little bit more run on, than I would like, but that's one thing too. If you can try to really keep your sentences compact, uh, that is also very helpful. And at the same time, you've probably heard this, but um, it's best to write without heavy use of jargon. So that's just technical language referring to a certain industry. Uh, our demand in itself is a little bit, it does have some jargon in it. But I think in this press release, we really tried to break it down so that, a regular news reader, so someone who likes to read but may not always know what maybe isn't as updated as you on the housing crisis or housing policy. So it's better to try to think about, hey, if you're talking to a friend on the phone, how would you explain this to them? To a friend that you don't who doesn't have much knowledge on this topic. And next, after the first paragraph, it's typically good to have a quote after that. And a quote typically adds it adds new information to that you haven't touched on. Uh, and for the first quote, it's typically good to have someone that's more of like a leadership role of your events or news, your events that are going on or organizing. So that could be director, organizer, local activists. So those types of roles. But I will get to the second quote, which uh, is is a space where in this, so I should clarify, in this particular template, I have Shauna's quotes, which is just kind of talking about uh how how building social housing can boost GDP and opens up jobs, like some new information. Um, but it's also a space too, if you have room in your press release. So like I said again, it's a press release is typically a page and a half long. You um can also add another quote, especially to if you have someone with lived experience in social housing, housing insecurity, where like social housing specifically is very like it's a very high stakes issue to them, um, low income groups, then this can be great to add as well from this perspective. Okay. Um, Sorry. I think later, I don't think I have her quote in the presentation, but I'll give it to you in the template. Um, but now we're moving into, so say we have our first quote, right? Um, the second quote wouldn't come right after it. It would be the trend tie-in. And trend tie-in is basically it's given the media context. So you're wanting to really this time try to emphasize why your news matters. So that can be connecting it to what's happening in the everyday world. So that's either statistics, studies, or current events. Um, about why it's really relevant right now and why people should care. And again, you want to avoid heavy use of jargon or run-on sentences. So this is a very packed slide, but it's just giving you some examples of what you could put in there. Um, of course, you don't have to go and go and address all of these points, but some examples could be information about your local context. So that's stats about the housing crisis in your community, how social housing, uh, how it's helped folks, your own experience, um, and also like, well, maybe the second point isn't as relevant. I think it's more relevant for op-eds. Um, Maybe if that can go in your second quote, which is more relevant to lived experience. You could talk about, the 30 plus long field experience of relying on the private market to provide low rent housing. Um, what else? Job losses, slow wage growth associated due to US tariffs. That's a big one. And just also how Canada falls very, very below other OECD countries in terms of our proportion of social housing. Like ours is has actually dropped, probably due to um due to expiring operating agreements and subsidies, but also just the erosion of low rentals due to demolition and of the such, which yeah, I bet a lot of you folks are already in the know on, but yeah, these are just some examples of certain things you can put in that space. Does anyone have any questions? Uh, Either if you want to like unmute yourself or
It's Leslie.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is super helpful, and I'm sorry that I've probably should know more of this at my age, but I don't.
No, that's
Um,
okay.
the thing that I find is, there's just so much around housing right now and around affordable housing and social housing. Like, how do you how do you find that 10 words at the beginning that will really resonate with people? And, you know, is there a way to like not just share information, but like do a call to action? And I know that, I mean, our organizations signed on to your thing. I think that was, like you did a really nice job on it. But, you know, you came up with something that was very catchy and proactive. 50,000 houses, 50,000, units every year for 10 years. Like, people could resonate with that. But how do you, keep that going?
That's true. And maybe like from understanding you, like how do you kind of like add on to that? Or like not like how we can
How do you
um
how do you do it so that people are like, oh, there's another thing about housing. It's an issue.
that's true. Um I think yeah, that's a really great question. And that's the thing with press releases too, is in any sort of media, like reporters, they want something that's newsworthy, something that's relevant, but also at the same time, if it just reiterates the same thing over and over, less to it's less appealing, right? And I think our particular argument, like that Schur's has come up with right now is that um I don't think it's talked about enough, but and but also at the same time, it might ruffle a few people's feathers, right, about social housing, but that's not always a bad thing, to cause a bit of like contrarian um views to like, arguments to come up against. And it's basically like how social housing can play a really big role and help us during this time of like great economic struggle or this time of we'll see economic struggle in the future, but also related to how social housing can create new jobs and in affected industries, right? And how it contributes to our productivity as well. I think that argument itself isn't like talked about enough. Um, and yeah, so it I definitely get what you're saying, Leslie. It's hard, it's difficult um to get people to listen. Sometimes it does feel like you're repeating yourself, but yeah, I would argue that this is a conversation that is relevant, but how we're talking about how it's a dual solution or one solution isn't like really talked about. So I would say um uh potentially like this lens that we're talking about right now, um, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Um, okay, so we've done first quote, and now this is trend tie-in. We've talked about like a second quote that can go after the trend tie-in or with kind of nestled within that, that's also kind of your prerogative too, is where the second quote uh could go. Um, and related to, context with the trend tie-in. But also talking about what Leslie touched on, it's a call to action. A call to action would be next in terms of the press release template or a demand. And that's really like, what do you want your target audience to take away from this? And is there anything you can call on them to do? Uh, for your readers, hey, can you is there an action you can take, like sign a petition, do our letter campaign, come out to this rally, or in our case too, it's our demand, just um really trying to make more people cautious of it, so that they could jump on board. So, the call to action we have is the government of Canada must commit to develop a minimum of 500,000 social housing units in the next 10 years for low-income households and those exiting homelessness. So that's at least 50,000 rent geared to income social housing units. Um, it must ensure that public lands identified for housing development remain in public and nonprofit hands. So, that could be, I'm talking about, yeah, just really allowing more of a monopoly, I would say, on public lands for nonprofit developers. Uh, so we can actually create deeply affordable housing um, at less than 30% of household income. But also, so getting back to that, in public and nonprofit hands to create non-market housing with maximum rents set at 30% of a household's income. And here we're also specifying that this would be 25% in Quebec because it is different there in terms of what they consider uh, social housing um, to be. Uh, okay. So then that's our call to action. That's more of a demand, like I was talking about, our demands. And then we're getting to the end. So now we want, after, we've talked about context and quotes, um, we have our boilerplate, and this comes at the very end, and you want to think about it as like a short about us section. So this could be about your org, about you as a person. You can link to a website or other media that can be helpful to reporters and readers. Um, yeah, it's just a boilerplate, I guess, at the bottom of a press release that can bring people elsewhere and connect with you more. So this is our boilerplate example. Social housing and human rights is a coalition of organizations and individuals advocating for greater federal investments towards social housing in Canada. You can access the coalition's call to action and frequently asked questions here. And this is the example and the template, but uh, it would probably make more sense to you as well to include um, some of your, like a backdrop on your organization as well, or again, who you are as an individual, like maybe trying to combine uh, both of those in this section. And this is generally just like a few words, so um, okay. And then I just have a small section on selecting media sources or reaching out to reporters. Um, and just if you're wanting to reach out to reporters with news, try to also not only just go for like big ones like the Globe and Mail or uh, the Globe and Mail, like Toronto Star, just naming ones at the top of your head. But if you live in a small community, a smaller like town set of your city, like if there's any local newspaper that you can send it to or online local blog, uh, that's also too good for amplifying your news as well. You want a diverse who you're sending that to as well. And another good thing is like when I've done a press release, I've tried to do research on who is reporting about social housing or the housing crisis in my community. Like just looking up those keywords either on different news sites or in your search engine. Like I know it's hard if you're just starting off, but if your org has like previous like or like recent articles with certain reporters, you can try to reach out to them as well if they've covered housing. Um, and there are a few services out there that tend to be like usually tend to be paid. Um, I'm trying to think of one at the top of my head, but like you could find them if you type in like find journalists, like press releases, if you type in those words. Like there are a few services out there that can connect you with journalists who are writing on an issue that you are covering. So housing crisis. Uh, but but yeah, they do usually tend to be paid, and some of them are more expensive. So my best advice is like trying to reach out uh either to people in your org, like on the communications end, if they have any um places to refer you. Um, I also know about Canadian Press that you can send it to them too, but it's I think there might be a fee as well. So yeah, just like knowing the connections in your org, like to ask about who have we been sending articles to in the recent past. Um, and then another point that I haven't included in these slides, but I also want to say too, is that if you have space in your press release, some other things that can be great to include are photos or videos too, if you can embed a video that um, those sort of those sort of forms of media can be really engaging for people, but also particularly for the reporters too, if they can gather information based on those videos or photos. Yeah, that is very helpful to have. Um, and like even times are different too. Some people might even have a press release as a video. So, um, if we want to get creative with making a video like that in this typical press release or in like a similar format. Um, it's more fun. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to put that out there too. And I think that's coming to the end of this presentation. Um, and I just wanted to before like I give you the template, um, actually, you know what? I'll give it to you now. I just wanted to ask, like, yeah, do you have any questions or thoughts?
I do have one question.
Yeah,
If like as an example, National Housing Day is November 22nd, how far in advance would one actually send, do you send it the day of, day before, a week before? Like when is it more effective to give them time and the capacity to work with the press release when it's a
yeah,
targeted day like that?
yeah, that's a really good question. Well, okay, for one thing, I would definitely recommend like uh trying to send it to the reporters like earlier in the day, just before everything like piles up for them. Um in like their inboxes. And in terms of like days when you should send it, um uh I like I do think it's great to give a little bit of lead time, so like a few days in advance, maybe not a week, but that's what I think personally, from my opinion. I know some people like worry that if they send it too far out, it would just get lost. Like uh just get lost because it's like they're sending it way too in advance. But for
Yeah,
me, like
not a month for sure.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
is that like a week might still be too much? 2 or 3 days is what you're thinking is probably ideal. If you're
Yeah.
it's not like obviously something in progress happening right now. This is something that's planned and you have the capacity to actually give them that couple days to plan to engage with the piece.
Exactly. Yeah, like I think you're exactly right on that. Like a couple of days lead time can be very helpful. Uh and like probably yeah, I would say like 3 to a week, like 3 days to a week. Uh yeah. Just to give them a bit of lead time, but like not too much that it's it just gets lost and they're like, well, they forget about it essentially. It's too far out. But yeah,
Hmm.
that's a very good question. Thank you, Jerry. Um, any other questions? I'm just gonna get the template up for you right now. Um, it's basically like what we've been going over. And then I also want to add up to that we're after this webinar, we're going to be like reaching out back to you so that you can have more resources. Uh, say if you are interested in like the other groups, like the what came of the op-eds or of events. So we're gonna follow up with everyone. But I'm just gonna link it for now in the chat. I'm also gonna connect you with our website too, just in case you don't have it. Um, and Twitter, on Twitter, or X, it's more sock hosing. Instagram, it's also more sock hosing. And then on Facebook, we'll also be sending this to you, but on Facebook as well. Uh, it's just if you look up social housing and human rights coalition, we just started a Facebook group, so you can also follow us there. And then we have a Blue Sky account too. And then Blue Sky is just more social housing. Uh, yeah. Um, thank you so much for coming out to this. And yeah, that's the end of this breakout group. So, we will be in touch too, with all this info.